This is a Fox News alert. We have breaking news right now out of Ferguson, Missouri. These are images from a video of police officer Darren Wilson at the police station, they say approximately 2.5 hours after the shooting. It is grainy and you cannot see much, but if you watch the video, I am told he's walking on his own accord. You cannot detect injuries from what we're seeing here, but of course we know from other reports that he reportedly did have some to his face after the altercation he had with 18-year-old Michael Brown, who he later shot dead. Ron Hosko is the president of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund and a former assistant FBI director who served under Eric Holder in 2012. Ron, thank you for being here. I just want to go through, this is breaking news just coming into us. Again, this is from the Post-Dispatch that got some information thanks to, I think it's a Freedom of Information or Sunshine Law request that they made. What I'm seeing here, and apologies to the audience as this is just coming in, is that in one line item, it shows that indeed Officer Wilson was notified that there were two thieves the police were looking for following a quick trip robbery of a cigar box of Swisher cigars. There had been questions earlier on in this case about whether Officer Wilson did or did not know that Michael Brown matched the description of somebody who had stolen cigars. At the time his altercation with him began, these radio calls, again reviewed by the Post-Dispatch, suggest, according to their reporting, that they do, that he was in fact aware of that theft. In your view, following the case, is that significant?
Certainly. I think that each one of these small pieces helps to paint the entire picture of what happened that day. And if the officer in fact knew and this looked like a potential suspect or suspects related to the robbery, that's important information to have.
Just want to tell the audience as well that Officer Wilson told authorities that during the shooting he called shots fired, send all calls on his radio. But during the struggle, his radio had been jarred and the channel changed. Again, this is the Post-Dispatch reporting. The Post-Dispatch reviewed the radio calls made during that period on all the channels, and they could not locate the call, although that is not surprising, I suppose, Ron, if the reporting is that the radio had been jarred and the channel changed.
These little nuances, Megan, are critical to help us paint the picture. It is going to be key for the grand jury to know and understand what was in Officer Wilson's head as this event was occurring.
It's incredible to watch this as the dispatchers are speaking back and forth, trying to get help, trying to get an ambulance out there. Erroneous reporting that someone had been hit with a taser. And then by 12:07 p.m., a woman wailing in the background as an officer called over his radio, get us several more units over here. There's going to be a problem. And boy, Ron, there was a problem. And we saw, days and days and days of protests. And now as we await a ruling by this grand jury, which we believe could come out any day now, sometime in November, we've been led to believe, the Attorney General of the United States is speaking out to the people of Ferguson and speaking once again about the police officers in Ferguson. And you are suggesting that Eric Holder is doing more harm than good when it comes to law enforcement. How so?
I think that, and I do believe I'm channeling some of what I hear from my friends and colleagues who are in law enforcement, that the early response to these events, both by the Attorney General and the President, in their actions, in actions they did not take or they haven't taken in other circumstances, telegraph to law enforcement that this administration is not with you. I'm very concerned when I hear comments from the President or the Attorney General referencing, in the Attorney General's case, his being car stopped by the police 30 years ago for speeding and asked if his car could be searched. He's making the leap, and it's not a very long one for a lot of people, that bias policing is alive and well in the United States. That's the answer. That's the first answer. The President made similar comments, I believe, in September to the Congressional Black Caucus references to walking while black or driving while black.
Why is that not appropriate if that is their experience? I think what their defenders have said is they are trying to show empathy for people who have had those experiences, to say, look, we get it, so you can trust us. We're on top of it. You don't need to be rioting in the streets. You have folks in office now who are empathetic to the situation you're describing.
And that is a very reasonable view. However, the other view is that these comments, in conjunction with the timing of Ferguson and events at Ferguson, and the department's practices and patterns review of the police department itself.
Right, they may be going after the department civilly. Go ahead.
The timing of that is problematic. That it suggests that the law enforcement, that police generally, and there are hundreds of thousands of police out there, I've worked with them in my career, are on the streets with a biased, prejudiced purpose. Mm-hmm. And that's terribly unfair. I think it makes the law enforcement job, which is very difficult, even more difficult, because this becomes the first answer for a lot of people.
And the tensions are already beginning to rise. We reported last night on how a couple of cities in the area are advising residents to prepare to perhaps be indoors, be stuck in their houses for several days in the wake of the grand jury's ruling, to get water, to get food, to bone up on supplies, because this is what they see happening in Ferguson after this grand jury comes back. And the implication is, if it comes back with no indictment. Ron, thanks for being here with your perspective.
My pleasure.